Welcome to the podcast, folks. Happy Wednesday. Hope everybody's having a great week here as we cruise along. Man, Tuesday was just an absolute gorgeous day. And I don't know, here in Lloyd, maybe it was more places than just here. That evening sky, she was a beauty. Hopefully you got to open up your blinds and see that, because she was gorgeous. And I keep saying I hope we get to October 31st so the kids can trick-or-treat without a foot of snow. And, man, fingers crossed here, knock on some wood, that we get there, because everything's better when the kids get to walk around not bundled up in 8 layers. We'll have them bundled, but hopefully no winter jackets and hopefully no snow pants, etc. And here's fingers crossed. Now, we got another good one coming on today, but before we get there, let's get to today's episode sponsors. Jen Gilbert and team, for over 45 years, since 1976, the dedicated realtors of Coldwell Banker Cityside Realty have served Lloydminster and the surrounding area. They offer star power to their clients. That's 7-day-a-week access, because they know big life decisions are not made during office hours. And did you know, when it comes to rental properties, they are the biggest licensed residential property management company in the city of Lloydminster. They deal with over 250 rental units. We're talking houses, apartments, and condos. That's Coldwell Banker Cityside Realty for everything real estate, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Give them a call, 780-875-3343. Mac Construction. Man, I've been doing a little creeping on the old Instagram creeping, and I don't know where Mac Construction is today, building their new place, but the view from it, I'm going to whistle a few more times, I think, on this go around. Like, it looks sharp. I don't know where that house is. I'm going to have to do a little digging to find out, but I probably got your curiosity piqued. Head over to Mac Construction's Instagram page for a couple of photos of where they're building their house, or building a house, I should say. Of course, they have been doing business locally for over 12 years with over 100 homes completed. Their design, build, custom home operation that specializes in these custom homes, cottages, and RTMs throughout Lloydminster and the communities. In addition to custom home building, they also do extensive renovations to residences and light commercial work. If you're looking for your dream house, head to macconstruction.ca and look no further. Jim Spenrath and the team over at Three Trees Tap and Kitchen. While I was doing my creeping on Instagram, I noticed I'd missed a post from them, and they've been open 6 years here in October. So congrats to you guys for 6 years of business. Tomorrow night, Thursday, October 28th, they got live music. They got the talented Jordan Pollard performing at 7 p.m. at live on location. So make sure, if you're wanting to take the special someone down there for an evening of entertainment, I would do a reservation myself, because every time I don't do that, I get burned. That's 780-874-7625. Head down, have a great meal. They got some of the best food in town. They're locally owned, and if you want to hear some live music, there's nothing better. Tomorrow night, that's Thursday, October 28th, you can hear the talented Jordan Pollard. Kiva Concrete, they've been going since 1979, the year of the 5-0 Edmonton Oilers. I thought, we've all been waiting a long time for the Oilers to be 5-0 starting the season. It feels like maybe they got a few more wins in them coming this year. Their power play is on fire, etc. They look pretty sharp on 08. They got this guy named Connor McDavid. Anyways, besides that, Kiva Concrete, they've been in business for 42 years. They offer all types of concrete services, from residential, decorative, and commercial flat work. I keep saying Instagram. I was just doing a little creeping on there as well, and I once heard a business say, I don't know why I'd put anything on Instagram or social media. I don't know if anybody even looks. And I mean, obviously, I'm looking for the ad reads, but some of the work that Kiva does, the pictures that give you kind of an idea on how they've done their work. Oh man, like they got some cool projects in the go. I always bring up if you're in town, the Spiro's patio. Well, I remember pulling up beside Chris when they were working on that, and now we've all seen what that patio at Spiro's has become. Well, hop on Instagram and you can get a look at their latest projects. And man, they do a ton of different projects, from shops, garage pads, patios, barns, countertops, driveways, basement floors, sidewalks. I mean, essentially, if you can dream it, they can do it. So give Chris a call today, 780-875-7678. HSI Group, they're the local oil field burners and combustion experts that can help make sure you have a compliant system working for you. The team also offers security, surveillance, and automation products for residential, commercial, livestock, and agricultural applications. It's right around this time before the snow flies. I always bring up all the cattle guys, as we get into the darker months, the colder months. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to sit inside and take a look at a couple of screens to see what the animals are doing? Just saying, just an idea. And, of course, I keep harassing Profit River because I know they got an HSI system going in there. I'm excited to see what HSI has done for Profit River's new spot. And, well, of course, they are the group that uses technology to give you that peace of mind so you can focus on the things that truly matter. They got some really cool products when it comes to surveillance and security. And all you got to do is stop in 3902 52nd Street or give Brody or Kim a call, 306-825-6310. They'll get you hooked up. If you're looking for any outdoor signage or maybe some frosted windows, a wall quote, a logo on the wall, look no further than Read 'em Right, 306-825-5111. Give them a call. Hassle Mrs. Deanna Wandler in a good way. I always say hassle, but I truly mean she always is the best to work with, and she gets me looking sharp. That's as simple as that. Gartner Management is a Lloydminster-based company specializing in all types of rental properties to help meet your needs. Whether you're looking for a small office or a 6,000 square foot commercial space, give Wade Gartner a call today, 780-808-5025. And if you're heading into any of these businesses, make sure you let them know you heard about them from the podcast, all right? Now let's get on to that T-Bar 1 Tale of the Tape. Born in 1951 in Vanguard, Saskatchewan, he is a father of 8, married for 39 years, a judge with the Courts of Saskatchewan for 30 years. I'm talking about community pillar Kim Young. So buckle up. Here we go. Well, it is February 14th, 2021. I'm sitting with Judge Kim Young. And I got to say, I was saying this to Richard Starkey before. I don't know what we three did so well on Valentine's Day of all days to come and sit and do this.
Yeah.
Some sweet talking nonetheless, but thanks for hopping in and coming to talk a little bit about your life.
For sure. Thank you so much, Sean.
Now, I always like to start it with maybe, growing up in Vanguard, Saskatchewan, you were saying a little bit south of Swift Current.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Small town.
What are some of the early memories you have?
Well, we didn't have paved roads for a long time. I remember riding the bikes in the muddy streets all the time. There was about, when I was a kid, maybe 200 population. It's now shrunk to well under 100 people. But it was a little town. Your major service stuff, lawyers and dentists and so on, you'd go to Swift Current. So we would use Swift Current for the town to, buy clothing and things like that. But farming community, obviously. There was no oil down there. They dug to 12,000 feet, and she's dry as a bone. So we never had any oil patch activity. You had to go down to Estevan before you get into that. But it was a good little 14.5 inches of annual rainfall on a 10-year average, and we grew wheat and durum down there. And we didn't have any cattle or anything. We were just straight grain farmers. And so that was those are some of my memories. I remember the sewer and water coming in the 1960s. That was something to see, the big backhoes digging up the streets and dumping the pipes and water pipes and sewer pipes down there. So it was good. I've still got friends from that home area that I see from time to time.
How about your parents? What did your parents do for work growing up?
My dad was a farmer, and my mother was a postmistress, whatever you want to call her, at Little Vanguard Day. And she had a couple of employees there that would sort the mail and do the things, attend to the counter and so on. And she did that till she was 65, till she retired. And my dad had some heart attacks, so we were getting stuff custom done towards the end because he had some health issues. But we kept all our machinery and stuff, but the neighbors we would hire on to do the harvest and put in the crops for the last few years. He was in bad shape for about the last maybe 6 or 8 years of his life. So I was off in university in those years, and life went on that way. He'd had rheumatic fevers as a kid, and it wrecked his valves, so he had valve issues on his heart. Rheumatic fever? Yeah, it somehow or another that can destroy your heart valves. I don't know much about medicine, but that's what he certainly attributed it to. 12-year-old kid, he got sick, and he thinks that's what damaged his heart valves, eh? And then he was to the Mayo Clinic getting heart operations a couple of times, and so on, eh? Had valves replaced. One of the ball and socket valves were replaced at the Mayo Clinic in Rochester. That helped him out a lot, obviously extended his life quite a bit. Saskatchewan at that time wasn't cooling people off, and you had to basically go to the States. Otherwise, you'd suffer X amount of brain damage if you had a 1970s heart operation in Saskatchewan, because without cooling the body down before they slice into you to do that work, you suffer some amount of brain damage. But if in those days, if you went to the U.S., it was only about $18,000 in those days to get heart surgery in the Mayo Clinic. So he goes down there, and they cool him down, and then they put him on the heart-lung machine and rip in through his rib cage and replace the valve. And he thought that was well worth it to get that sort of treatment, versus at that time in Saskatchewan, they were doing heart surgery in Regina and Saskatoon, but they weren't cooling you down before they did it. And that was something that he was aware of and didn't want to participate in. So he jumped the system and got done down in the U.S.
Wow. I would have never, ever thought of that.
Well, later on in Saskatchewan, they came up to speed. I know my dad, when he told that to the doctors in the Mayo Clinic, they couldn't believe it. And they said they had a colleague in Regina, the actual heart doctor, Sherman, I think was the guy's name, phoned in my dad's presence to Regina and asked him if this was true. He had a patient here that said blah, blah, blah. And the doctor says, whoa. But we've all caught up in Saskatchewan. Things are going good now. But in those days, they were kind of behind the times in open heart surgery, eh? But they're up to speed now, that's for sure.
That's super interesting.
Yeah. That wasn't all out crazy long ago in the 1970, 71 in those years, but yeah, for sure.
What did when you look back and think of your parents, what were some of the things they tried to instill in you?
Well, hard work. I can remember we had a pretty big farm back then, and you'd be out kind of partying on a Friday night, and I slept in a trailer in the yard just to kind of be on my own, and you'd hear at about 7 a.m, your dad pounding on the door, come up, we got a whole bunch of all the tansy weeds were a foot high, and we were behind, and he'd be banging on the door. It just felt so bad. You'd drag your butt out and get to work on the weekend summer following. We summer followed 50-50 in those years. You'd summer follow half the fields and grow the other half and back and forth. But the weeds, you had to hit her about 3 times throughout the year to keep the weeds rolled under. We used diskers to roll them under type of thing. We didn't have any erosion problems, so we could get away without cultivators, just a one-way disker to flip it over. And I can remember riding that old John Deere tractor and wondering, oh my goodness, what is this all about? Got to get out of here, eh? So hard work, I guess, is the only thing that I can recall from that.
Kids, you don't go partying on the weekends,
yeah,
do you?
Right, eh? Yeah, I sure did then. Yeah, lots of fun.
What years were your parents born in?
My father was born in 1912, and my mother was born in 1918.
Did you ever talk to them about their young years? Or?
Oh yeah, for sure. And they told lots of good stories. They grew up on the farm. They were both born in the little towns. My mother's from Annaroy, my father's from Vanguard, and they grew up and they would walk to town in those years. My dad was 15. He got a Model T, and he could drive around in his Model T. At that point, he was mobile. And at 16, he takes the Model T because he'd hit the Dirty 30 depressions and he drives it to Barrie, Ontario, where his uncle, his dad's brother, owned a grocery store. So the biggest part of the journey was going down there. He kept hitting Old Wives Lake, which is this huge lake the other side of Moose Jaw. And it took him forever to get around Old Wives Lake. And once he got to Regina, the trail was pretty decent all the way to Ontario. But he drove that down there. And in Regina, it backfired. He broke his wrist from the Model T backfiring. And with the broken wrist, he spent a day or two in Regina and carried on with the broken arm to Barrie, Ontario. And you can imagine how rough that would be, shaking that broken arm. But he was going to get there, and so on. Then he hitchhiked back, so to speak, rode the rails back, and he got to Regina just in time for the Regina riots, and Regina they were rioting at that time. And one of the stories he told me that sticks in my mind, he had some money in the toe of his shoe, but he didn't want to use it. He wanted to save it to go back home with. And he's riding the rails, and you get to Regina, and on College Drive, there's all these big, rich Jewish houses where all the Jewish people had lots of money, and they were living in these houses. And the bum men from the railway tracks would walk, and they'd stand behind the stone fence on College Drive in Regina. And the Jewish women would come out with hot loaves of bread, and they didn't want to intermingle with people. They put them on the top railing of the stone fence, and then these guys could get this bread. And so those poor women were in there cooking their heads off to keep all of the bums in Regina fed. And he said they had a lot of charity. That's the only place you could get a meal. There was no food banks and things like that in those days. And these Jewish women would feed the rows of transients that were lined up in Regina. My dad actually had money in the toe of his shoe, but he was going to get the free lunch anyhow because he wanted to save the money he'd earned in Ontario to get home. So when he got home, he was able to pay the taxes on the farm, which were in arrears by then, to keep the farm in the family with the money he'd earned with his uncle in Ontario. Quite the story. He wasn't participant in the riots, but he was at the Regina riots when he was at Regina at the time. I was on his way back from Ontario. He'd been down there. Yeah.
That's a story.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
I've taken a road trip out to Ontario on our roads in a car that goes relatively fast. Well,
and
compared
smooth.
to smooth and everything else.
Yeah. Well, the Model T was quite interesting. It could run on 3 tires. If you had a flat tire, you just took it off and put it in the trunk and kept going on 3. You just couldn't turn into it. But you could go to Toronto on 3 tires. It would run on 3. And it didn't matter which tire it was, you could run on the 3 tires. You could take the flat tire off and deal with it. But they had spares, of course. But the way the Model T was configured, it could run on 3 tires.
It's too bad they wouldn't have had this technology. So he could have done a video journal as he, or even an audio journal as he's going.
Yeah. So when he's back home, he was telling me that there's a brass pitcock on a Model T. So when you got home in the winter, you would drain the water out of it. And I'm talking water, not antifreeze. You'd put it in a big metal pot, and you'd put it on the cook stove. And then when you wanted to run the Model T, you'd close that pitcock off, you'd pour the warm water into the radiator that was sitting on your stove all night, and she'd light up and you were going. So that was your block heater, was your cook stove, eh? You just put the hot water in it then from that was been sitting on top of the cook stove. And that's how they ran her in the 20 below weather in those days.
And now, what was it, only like 4 days ago, it was minus 39, and I just fired the truck up and away she went.
Yeah.
I mean, not quite that way, but you know.
Yeah, for sure. But quite the old stories from way back when.
When you're in high school growing up, did you always have your eye on what you wanted to do?
No, not at all. I was happy to get my grade 11. I was actually accepted conditionally to the RCMP, but you had to have grade 11. When I got my grade 11, I figured, I got the world by the time I got my grade 11 now. And I went over to Pontex, and they measured me and did my chest expansion, all these things, and said to me, "You're kind of young. Why don't you wait a year, and you'll be accepted then?" And so I goes, and we had a big crop that year. And when June was done, we had this big crop, one we hadn't seen for quite some time. My dad says, "You just got to stay and help me take off the crop. That's all there is to it. You can't wander off." So fine, eh? So he gets the crop off in October, and at that point, university already started. My sisters were going to university. So I decided I'm going to Alberta to get a job on the oil rigs. That's where all the big money was in those days. So I gets in my 59 Chevy two-door hardtop and starts driving to Alberta to get a job on the oil rigs. I think I was 18 years old at the time, 17 or 18, I forget just which. And I gets to Gull Lake, and I sees this big oil drilling outfit. So I pulls over there, walked around, who's in charge here, and I didn't even know the names of the players at the time. And I finally gets the guy, and I says, "I'm looking for a job on oil rigs, but you're right here." And I'd left on a Saturday morning. So my dad knew her, and my parents knew where I was going. I was going off to get a job in oil rigs. Guy says, sure, Monday morning in the Gull Lake Hotel. And I remember the Gull Lake Hotel, there's a big buffalo on the wall when I got there. He says, you be there at 8 o'clock in the morning and you're hired. He was obviously desperate for employees because I was somebody that knew nothing. So I drives back to Vanguard, and on Saturday night, my dad looks out the window, and there's my quite distinctive 59 Impala driving by, and he must have shook his head, and he says, well, what the hell, what kind of a guy is that? He's back already. I'd left in the morning, and I was back at night driving the streets, visiting with people, because I had this job come Monday morning, So I gets off there. It was one of the coldest damn winters that there's ever been, and freezing to death. It was an open rig. This was antelope drilling. And Precision was next door with these closed-in rigs. So I goes over to Precision and says, can I get a job with you guys? Because I'm dying. It was like 20 below in November. No openings here at all. So I goes back and I freeze. I comes home for Christmas. And my sister says, you should come to university. It's really easy. And I said, oh, God. I'm no good at school. I'll flunk out. She says, no, you come to University of Regina and I'll put you in easy classes. You'll do really, really well. It's warm. It's nice. I said, absolutely. I'd made some money by this time with antelope drilling, so I had some money in my pocket. And I goes off to the U of Regina, and just like she said, it was a piece of, I was taking geography and economics and English and things like that, and it was a lot easier, I found, than high school, and did very well at university. So I just kept going because that was the life then. It was a way better life than working out of Dollard and Shaunavon and Gull Lake and all these places. Because in those days, the drinking age was older. It was 21, So all the other rig hands would go to the bar, and I'd be stuck in my room because I was a far cry. Then they changed. When I was in university, the drinking age changed to younger. But when I was on the oil rigs, I couldn't go to the bars that all other people were because of the 21 drinking age, in Saskatchewan.
So you go to school then after your foray into working the rigs, which
It was good. It was good. It was just so damn cold. Any other year, I'd have been probably way better off. I'd still be there, but it was so cold, and we were outside on the drill. Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've all worked outside. Well, I can't say we all have, but for anyone who's worked outside in any part of the winter in Canada, you get a new appreciation for being inside more often than not, because there's a lot of days, and this week has been proof in the pudding, brutal. So to speak. It has been brutal, right?
For sure.
So you go to university. What steered you to becoming a lawyer?
My sister, the same sister.
Because I have to, before you go any further, you go, I'm going to flunk out, I'm going to be no good at it, and all of a sudden you become a lawyer?
Well, my sister, the same sister, Denise, her and her fiance by this time, they're both going to law college. So you could go down to the registrar's office in Regina and get the forms to apply for law college. I says, no. She says, we're going, you should go too. So she gets the form, she fills it out, not me, fills out the application for law in Saskatoon. And then I start looking around, and all the guys I was hanging out with, the Dale Canhams and all these other people in Regina, they were all going to law college. I thought, geez, I better go because there's going to be nobody left here in Regina. So my sister had sent in my application. She filled it out, sent it in, and I got accepted. And I went up to Saskatoon and started doing law, courtesy of her. It wasn't my idea to apply for law college, but she did it for me, so to speak, because she was going and John was going and so on and so on. So it turned out pretty good. And sure enough, when I get to law college, I knew all sorts of people there that I'd been hanging out with in Regina at the Regina campus. So it turned out really good.
You make it seem like it was just so easy to become a lawyer.
Well, I had good marks in Regina, so when I applied, that was the meritocracy back then. You got accepted on the basis of your GPA, your mileage. Now there's all sorts of other woke sort of criteria that they're trying to fill all these quotas. But back in my day, in 1972, it was how good of a student you were determined. There was no interviews. There's no interviews to this day. You sent in a picture of yourself in your application. They looked at the classes you took and the marks you got. They weren't trying to have other sorts of criteria. So I having good marks in Regina was got accepted, no problem, as did my sister and her fiance and everybody else, because it was based on marks. Nowadays, who knows how they accept students to either medicine or law college. But back in those days, it was a meritocracy. It was the kids with the highest marks got into law college, period. And that's how I got in, because I happened to. They didn't look mercifully at my high school marks. They'd have thrown me right out. They looked at my university marks, which were a lot better than my high school marks.
Which is a good lesson for if any kid just caught that, or any person for that matter. Your high school marks were okay, but you went somewhere and
I think I had a 74 or 76 average in high school. It was not great. I remember the Geo-Trig when I wrote it in 1969. I knew I had flunked it because off to the left-hand side, they had the marks, and I was struggling. God, it was hard. I couldn't get through it. By the time I had to hand it in, I did about 45% marks. If I'd have got 100% of those, I'd have still only got 45. So I knew I was going to flunk grade 12, period, because the Geo-Trig was going to kill me. I come back, I got 72 or something. The whole thing, they marked it on the curve because it was such a hard exam that people all over the province obviously were having as much difficulty with me. So I got a 70 something in it, and I know to this day that I only did 45% of the questions on it. But the curve thing was what got me through.
Pulled you along.
Yeah. Otherwise, I wouldn't have made it for sure. Right?
So was it interest then that once you got to university, why it was so easy?
I took economics, geography classes like that, and I thought they were very interesting. I enjoyed them, and I worked at it, and I got good marks, and I partied a lot too, just like you'd imagine. But I didn't take any. My sons all went, but they took the organic chemistry and physics and really tough classes. I took what I consider to be easier classes than what my kids ended up taking when they went to university, because I looked at some of the stuff they were doing. It was just freaky. It seemed so difficult to me when I looked at their course content. So I didn't think economics is hard. I didn't think geography was hard, and it fit me maybe a lot better than it fit other people. That's for sure.
Maybe I just stare at lawyer as not an impossible degree to go get, but as more difficult than some degrees. Maybe that's just my own thought process.
The hardest college to get into at the U of S now is dentistry, period. They take 24 kids, and you got to be, it's way easier to get into medicine than dentistry, and law is pretty darn easy because there's so many law colleges around. Little wee places like Kelowna and stuff have law colleges, Lethbridge, places like that don't have the medicine and dentistry colleges. So your chance of getting in, let's say in Alberta, to law, there's all sorts of places you can go and get a law degree. Lethbridge, Mount Royal, Calgary, Edmonton, who knows what else. Whereas the more difficult ones like dentistry, you can only hit the target, I think, in Edmonton or Calgary, and it's the same for medicine. So there's more competition for some of those because there's less kids getting in to those because of what it takes. So law now is, I'm sure, a little bit easier to get into than the dentistry or medicine or vet med or any of those other ones where there's less of an intake. Vet med would be probably the toughest of them all to get into now because there's so few. I think there's only 20 kids a year from Saskatchewan that get into vet med. So it would be tougher on the odds to get into that than it would be even to dentistry, where I know they take 24 kids each year into first year dent. So that's a tough one.
You bring up kids, and knowing you've had 8 in a world that 2 seems like a lot, 3 seems like a lot. Why did you and the wife decide? Why did you and Colleen go? Was 8 always the plan, or did it just kind of happen?
It kind of happened. It wasn't the plan, but we had good, healthy kids, no problems with any kids. They were good kids, and we weren't scared to have another one because the first batch that we had were so darn good that it wasn't scaring us off. And they were easy kids to raise. Boys are clearly tougher to raise than girls. There's no doubt about that. But we just were having kids that we quite enjoyed, and it was. Just went from there. It wasn't planned to begin with. We had no idea where we were going. The last 2 were twins, of course, so that doubles it up. The last last batch of kids we had were Ace and Duke twins. So, bango, you jumped to 8 from 6 real quick, eh?
But you were going for 7.
Yeah, we were going for 7. Correct. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. But some people struggle with raising kids, and it's not fun for them, and the kids are difficult. The kids have health issues or other ADH problems or something like that, which I'm sure puts a lot of stress on the parents, and they start wondering, my goodness, do we want any more of these hard to raise little critters, eh? But ours were easy to raise, I think.
How many years between all 8? What was the youngest to the oldest?
Oh, we had about 13 years, I think, spread. And the twins, of course, you get 2 there with the same birthday, eh? So I think that's about the spread that we had.
So the oldest was 13 when you were having the twins?
Yeah, in Nevada, we had a built-in babysitter, the poor thing. So she, you know how girls start babysitting about 12 or 13. Our poor daughter was being the oldest. She had if we want to go to a movie, guess who's looking after the kids type of thing, eh? Pretty rough life for her. She got into it. Yeah. We had other babysitters from time to time.
What did you pay for a babysitter?
Oh, God. You'd give the kids $5 or $10. I know the Collins girls babysat for us and other neighbor kids and so on, eh? And it was nothing. The movie cost way more than the babysitter in those days, eh? Yeah. Or whatever in the heck you were doing, eh? Yeah.
I just have this... I envision the babysitter walks in and there's just kids hanging from everywhere.
Hanging from the chandeliers, you betcha. Yeah. Okay, yeah, for sure. No, it's tough. We didn't have 2 babysitters. You only had 1. With that amount of kids, you could have justified having 2 of them running the show, but we got away with that. It was kind of bedtime-ish for the most part, so yeah. We never went on long. If we were going for a long period of time, we would use our Colleen's parents or Colleen's sister or something like that to do the babysitter. They'd move in and stay with the kids for a bit that way. Eh? Yeah. No.
What was a family vacation with 8 like? Did you take any family vacations?
Oh, tons. I had a 15-passenger Ford van. Kid you not, just like the Hutterites would have, eh? And we would tie a boat on the back of that and go fishing in Campbell River. It was the greatest holidays we've ever had. It was wonderful. My mother was in Calgary, so we could spend the night there. That was the first leg of the trip. And then we would go to the water slides at Salmon Arm for the next night, and the kids would be scooting down the water. And the next night we're at Campbell River to go salmon fishing, eh? We took everybody along. It was a wonderful vacation. And that big old 352 Ford would pull that sucker through the mountains and pull the boat behind, and kids hanging on the windows, and it was a good vacation. We'd be out there for about 2 weeks, 10 days, 2 weeks, whatever it turned out, and get out in the boat. We'd pile them in there and go. I had a pretty big boat, so we could pile everybody into it and go out on the ocean and fish. It was lots of fun. That was our main vacation. We had a cabin at Perch Lake later on, and we would use that for summer vacations too. But we went 13 years in a row salmon fishing before the salmon kind of dried up in about 97 or so. They kind of went extinct out there, overfishing clearly of the herring. But then we kind of went back the last few years. We were back there last summer. Even in the pandemic, we stayed at Painter's Lodge, and you could have shot guns off in some of those resorts. They closed down April Point because of no American fishermen were allowed to come in, and we were Canadian, so we went there, and we had the hotel to ourselves and the ocean to ourselves for the most part. There was the ferry traffic and a few other boats, but she was dead out there. BC was dead this summer compared to anything we've ever seen before. We still went out there, and Casey brought the kids along, and most of the kids flew out. We'd pick them up at Comox and did some fishing, eh? We thought at that point, that we were seeing the tail end of the pandemic. It looked as if it was waning this summer. And then, of course, it jumped up again in the fall and took off again. But there's more restrictions now than there even were in August.
Yeah, it's. I would assume in all your years you've never seen anything like this.
No, nobody has. It's so devastating to the local businesses and so on. It's so bad. How many restaurants will go under? How many will survive? All sorts of other businesses. So difficult on them.
When you look back at 8 kids in a van, are those some of your happiest days?
Oh, for sure they were. They were great days. Yeah, they were great days. Yeah, yeah.
I hadn't thought about so a vehicle would have been a very interesting purchase for you, because you wouldn't have been able just to be like, well, we're gonna go pick up the minivan, because the minivan wouldn't have sat you all.
We had a GM Suburban when we had about 4 or 5 kids, and just grew out of it. I wore out 2 of those 15E 350, which is built on a 350 truck chassis, great big brakes. And I wore 2 of them out. I ran them 240,000 clicks on the first one and ran the second one out, eh? Then we hit a moose at Waseca with it, and that was the end of that one. But then we were hauling kids that day. We were hauling them Duke and Ace to university, and we'd taken some other local kids to drop them off at residence. And on the way back from Frost Week there, we hit a moose and broke the block on that 352 Ford big van. And I know the SGI guy had never seen that before. The moose hit so hard that the motor broke, which is unheard of.
Anyone hurt?
No, the moose, but not us. Our airbags went off and so on and so on. I was worried. I kind of panicked. All that white foam comes from the airbags, and I was pulling people to go out and stand on the fence. I figured that the truck would get rear-ended again because it was dead. The battery and everything was all busted. It was dead, sitting kind of half on the curb and a little bit onto the highway, and I was afraid it would get rear-ended a second time. And I was hauling everybody up to the fence line, eh? And then sure enough, some farmer guy from Lashburn came by and hauled us all back into Lloydminster. We took some of the items out of the truck, and he was good enough. He hooked onto the van and skidded it into the grass part of the ditch so it wouldn't cause a second accident, which could easily happen when it's dead like that, without any battery functional and so on. Somebody could rear-end it a second time. We stood by the fence, and the farmer guy towed it well into the ditch then, and then we loaded up and he drove us to town. But we weren't hurt at all. But it was quite the deal. And those mooses have no reflectors. They're just, I remember I was doing the claim at SGI, the guy said, "What happened?" I said, "The moose dropped out of the sky right in front of us, because we never seen it coming. It was just there as if it had come straight down. Never saw it coming through the ditch or anything. It was just bango right in the front of the van, right there by Waseca, right by McFadden's insurance big sign there, eh? Big cow moose."
Where along the way do you meet Colleen?
I met her when I was a lawyer in Saskatoon. We were in the 279 3rd Avenue North, which is the Sask Mutual building, and in that building was Consumer and Corporate Affairs, our law firm, which was the ground floor, and then Sask Mutual Insurance. And Sask Mutual would put a girl at the front desk when you came in to direct traffic, because people would come staggering in there wanting to see the lawyers. Well, you go through that door. You want to see weights and measures and consumer affairs, you go that door. So she was employed by them to direct traffic within the building, right at the front foyer. And Colleen had that job, and I'd see her every morning, say hello to her type of thing when I walked into work. And then I met her downtown. We were at the Senator Hotel, and she was downtown shopping. It was a Saturday night, and I bumped her and I said, "Oh, you're the girl from the desk," type of things. So I bumped into her downtown. But I'd said hello to her for a few months before I met her downtown. I didn't even know what her name was when she worked at Sask Mutual. Maybe I did. I don't remember. But I didn't meet her till later on. But that's how I first saw her, was working at the insurance company there.
What was it about Colleen then?
Oh, just fun-loving person, and a good person. So we just hit it off real easy. It was good. Yeah. And she helped me. I was into politics in those days, out hammering doors and working on the political scene, and she kind of got drug into it at that point, following me around doing all the political things. Back in the 78, I ran in 78 with Dick Culver for the Conservatives, and we lost that one. I lost that one, but that was our first. We got into some by-elections and federal elections and so on and so on and so on, till finally I got elected in 82. And then I was MLA there at that point, and we got married by then. We were married by then, me and Colleen. So she's seen it all from that end.
Now you're seeing the reverse.
Now I'm seeing the reverse. You betcha. Now I get to go with her sometimes, eh? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. If you rewind the clock then, married in 82?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
So closing in on 40 years.
Oh, yeah. We've been married a long time. Yeah, for sure.
What does 8 kids and almost 40 years of marriage tell you?
Well, you got to pick them right in the first place, and I got lucky there. I don't know if it was brains or good luck, but you got to have somebody who will stick with you. And there's lots of ups and downs with the kids, and ups and downs with us, and so on and so on. But you just have to get the right one, and whether that's a result of my good choosing or just my dumb luck, I don't know. But it sure works out good when you get the right one. Yeah. I tend to think it was my good choice, versus my good luck, but
maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah, who knows? But some people have some very bad habits that they're hard to live with if they're chain smokers or this or that or whatever, and you just hopefully don't get somebody that's tough to live with. That's for sure. And the kids certainly marry you together as well. You got a common interest in their well-being, so you're working on the same task at all times, eh?
I'm going to stick with this 8-kid thing, I think, for the next 10
you're
hours.
hung on that. You're hung up on that.
Well, that's a lot.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, and I don't know. Was Colleen on board with it right from the start?
Oh, yeah. She wasn't forced into that at all. She loved it. She's a Catholic, and these Catholics like big families. So I attribute it to her, I'm a prod. She's a Catholic, and Catholics like big kids, eh? Lots of kids.
That came out of my mouth, Rob. What I was meaning is like when you sat down and had the conversation of, hey, do you want kids? Yeah, I do. Do you want lots of kids?
No. We got married to have kids. We were living together for quite some time before we got married. Are you with me there?
Okay.
So we were of the old school. You can't have kids unless you get married. So the marriage was a function of wanting to have kids, not the other way around.
Interesting.
Yeah. We lived common law for quite some years, and then we decided we're going to have kids. And we're going to have kids. You got to get married, and blah 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 blah. Put that all together in that way, eh? So that was the cause of our marriage was having kids. We were from the old school. There's all sorts of people now that have kids out of wedlock, but that wasn't in our DNA. So
you're willing to be common law, live together, but have kids together.
No, and nor did we. Yeah, we drew the line. You draw the line somewhere, so that's where we drew the line. Eh? And and right after we got married, we started having kids. Just that simple, eh? Yeah. For sure. People have different values depending on how they grew up and so on and so on. And nowadays, that's certainly with some people it's the norm. But for other people, they'll have kids in or out of wedlock. They could care less, eh? But we thought that was a big deal back then.
Going back to your career, I kind of switched topics on there for a little bit, but you mentioned politics. You mentioned graduating, becoming a lawyer.
Right.
Why politics? Why did you get into politics?
I just enamored with it. I had worked on federal campaigns when I was back for Frank Hamilton and Swift Current, and my dad was a fire-breathing Diefenbaker guy, not active, but in those days, the new party was the NDP party. The Liberals had a stranglehold on Saskatchewan all these years. So my dad was an NDP because that was the party of change, if you can imagine that, way back. And I would go out with him and hang on to his leg as a little kid at these NDP meetings and so on, and the politics were up there. When I got to Saskatoon, I met Dick Culver and the Conservative lawyers there, and I got enthralled with conservative politics. My dad was a conservative federally, so federally he was a Diefenbaker guy. Provincially he was an NDP guy because you got to go back to 1930 before, in the Anderson government, before the Conservatives were in play in Saskatchewan. It was the Liberals and the NDP all of those years. My dad hated the Liberals, hated Trudeau, and wouldn't support the provincial Liberals, so he by default he had to be a provincial NDP. But when Dick Culver single-handedly invented and reinvented the Conservative Party in 1975, then there was an alternative to the Liberals. on the spectrum, and it was a natural for me, and my dad quite agreed with me that that was at that point the NDP were getting old by that time, and I remember when Blakeney came out with the seatbelt laws, my dad went through the roof, says, "What's going on? We had the freedom, blah, blah, blah." So he was really upset with being forced to do something that wasn't in his nature. Well, of course, when you look in hindsight, Blakeney was right and my dad was wrong. But my dad felt he was being stifled by the government with all sorts of things like that. So he was growing tired of the NDP about the time that I took out a membership in the Conservative Party, which had just been invented. We didn't have much hope. The Liberals were the opposition. It was the third party, the provincial Progressive Conservatives by that time, But at the time I joined them and started working for them, and federally we're always Conservatives, of course.
I feel like this is a dumb question, but before the Conservative Party, what was there?
There was the Liberals,
Yeah,
Ross Thatcher and those kind of people, and the NDP, the Tommy Douglas people, and so on. That's in Saskatchewan. In 1930, there had been a one-year Conservatives called the Anderson government, but then they went dead. They went dormant. They didn't exist. They didn't elect any members. They were gone. And it wasn't until 1975 that this Dick Culver guy, who was an accountant in Saskatoon, reinvented the Conservative Party, the Progressive Conservative Party of Saskatchewan. But he was still the third party because the Liberals under Ted Malone and Alan Blakeney and all these guys were in power and they had all the MLAs. So he elects 7 members in 1975. Then Gary Lane and Colin Thatcher walk the floor from the Liberals to the Conservative Party, which gives them the momentum. So in 1982, by the time that rolled around, that was the election I got elected in, the Liberals were wiped right off the map. And it was just the Conservatives under Grant Devine by that time and the NDP under Alan Blakeney at that time. And the Liberals disappeared. They've been disappeared ever since. Linda Haverstock was there for a bit, and she did a good job. But it was stomped out when they got rid of her. That was the death knell for the Saskatchewan Liberal Party, and now it's just been a two-party. Now it's the Brad Wall Conservatives versus the NDP. So we're back to two parties. But Culver reinvented the Progressive Conservative Party in 1975, and I was with him for about 1976 on, working for him in Saskatoon, and Harold Lane's by-election in 1977, and Bill McKnight and the federal guys and so on. Yeah, it was actually provided with a bit of a social life. We had curling bonspils and we had conventions, and it was a good opportunity to go out and meet people over and above the pure politics of it. It had a social aspect to it as well.
you mentioned a name in there, Colin Thatcher.
Yeah.
There's a name that everyone should probably know.
Yeah, for sure. He got elected in 75 as a Liberal, and then him and Gary Lane, who went on to the Saskatchewan Court of Appeal, both walked the floor to Dick Culver. They left the Liberals while they're sitting members and walked over to Dick Culver and the Conservatives. When Culver then lost the 78 election, he took off to Arizona, and Grant Devine was elected to be the leader of the party, and then he won in 82 and with a landslide victory, and just about wiped out the NDP in that 82 election. They only had, I think, nine people that got reelected for NDP, and Devine took over from there. And then it moves on to Brad Wall was the next reincarnation in 2007. He starts coming again. So his first election was 2007 that Brad Wall got, and he's kind of been in power ever since. It's now Mo, but it's the same group of people that got it going again in 2007.
Colin Thatcher going to prison must have been a shock, though, to everyone, I assume.
Right. It was interesting. There was a lot of law that Jerry Albright was his defense lawyer, and there was some strange law. It was the first time that I think Queen's Bench Judge Maher ruled that the jury didn't have to decide whether Thatcher did it himself or put somebody up to murdering his wife. Either way, it would be murder one, and I think prior to that time, everybody had in their mind, me as a lawyer, that the Crown had to pick one of the two. They couldn't say, well, we don't care. It was one of the two, and we're leaving it at that. So that, in my mind, was a change in the law. at the time. Now, Dick Culver testified against him at his trial, if you remember. So Dick Culver was certainly a man of principle, because this guy had been one of his loyal supporters over the years. And Culver came up from Arizona and testified that to the effect, I won't quote it exactly, but Culver had been down at his Wickenburg ranch and was looking around for a hitman type of thing. That's roughly what it came. So Culver did not help him at the jury trial in Saskatoon. Didn't help him at all. And I'm sure that Culver was just telling the truth. Culver died here about 2 years ago. He died in the Philippines. But he was quite the guy. He really brought the Conservative Party again. And then, of course, on the Brad Wall days, the remaining Liberal guys amalgamated with the Progressive Conservatives to form the Sask Party. That's the genesis of the Sask Party. It's an amalgamation of the Liberals in those days, the kind of remnants of the Linda Haverstock days, joining up with the Progressive Conservatives and Bill Boyd and all those people, and they formed this new party called the Sask Party, amalgamation of the two. Yeah, merger. It's worked pretty good, really.
Well, you've got quite the mind for politics, because you've been able to call on it here quite easily. Why did you get out of politics?
I got appointed the judge, and it was the premier. The premier appoints the judge, and the crazy part about being a judge in the days I was appointed, people mistakenly think you're the best lawyer out there, that the government's going to pick the best lawyer to be the judge, and I was not the best lawyer in Saskatoon, far from it, but I was one that the premier knew. So it was like a political appointment. The premier appoints the people he knows and has confidence in, not necessarily the best lawyer in town, because having been a lawyer in Saskatoon, I had a pretty good handle on who the best lawyers were, and I wasn't in that category, but I still got appointed to be the judge. So that's how it works. It's political appointment, if there ever was one. Nowadays, there's other criteria going into the hopper, but I'm sure it was an okay lawyer, but certainly there was lawyers that were head and shoulders above me in any particular field, and yet I get appointed to be the judge because I knew the premier, type of thing.
And how have you enjoyed? Can I even call it enjoyment? Being a judge?
Oh yeah, it's been treated me very, very well. One of the things that I talked to people. We had a Filipino guy that I got to know, Eugene, here the last couple of years, and he tells me how things go in the Philippines and how the system works there and how the politics works and how the bribing the traffic cop works and all this kind of stuff. And I think back, and I've been 35 years now as the judge and Lloyd minister. I have never had one person even attempt in any way to unduly influence me on anything, ever. And that says so much about the people of Western Canada, for sure. Nobody has tried it. And I had one poor kid years and years ago, a kid from Kitscott. He phoned me up. He was charged with something. He phoned me at home because my phone number's in the phone book. I don't try to hide. I got to sign up on my acreage where I live, and I'm not hiding from the people. This one is about a 17-year-old kid phoned me up and said, I didn't do that. I said, whoa, fella, you can't just phone me up and tell me your side of the case. So I dutifully the next day told the prosecutors I had this call from this kid. I said, he was innocent. He didn't know any better. He didn't realize that was wrong. But that's the only time any accused person has ever phoned me up at home when I'm in the phone book. And they never have. And this kid didn't know any better. He wasn't trying to be underhanded. He just thought, well, I better tell the judge that I'm innocent here. So I have never had anybody try to unduly influence a decision or anything. Everything is done proper. If you want to make a statement on behalf of the accused, you come to open court and you're a character witness for him. That's all according to the book, and that's the way it should be. But nobody has ever phoned me up at home and tried to influence anything I was doing. And that speaks so well of the people of this area. You would not find the same thing in most countries on planet Earth. There'd be somebody trying to influence your decision if you were in some other country. And we don't have that here. It really speaks highly, not of me, but of the people in this area who just have that sense of decency about them.
Did I catch there that you've been doing it for 35 years? Did I
Yeah.
hear that right? So
Yeah.
if my math is correct, you turned 70 this year.
I do, and I'm forced to retire then, and I'm glad to retire. So on March 31st, which is a Wednesday, is my last day on the job, and the legislation has an end date for the judges. We can't stay on the bench till we're 90 or something like you can in the U.S. So at 70 years of age, you are out the door. And I've been thinking I should get in my robes and hang on to the back door, and then have some people pull me, have the press there, and they could have a picture in the paper about the judge refuses to leave and he's clinging to the back door. You can have fun with that, hey? But no, you're forced to go, and there'll be a new judge and administrator to do my duties when I'm gone, of course, eh?
Yeah, well, I think by the time people hear this, that'll come to pass,
yeah,
right?
Yeah,
So
for sure.
But essentially, then, for half your life, you've been
Exactly.
you've been in that
35 and
position.
35. I was 35 when I got appointed, and another 35 years takes me to 70. So exactly, come March 31st, I'll be doing half of my life as a judge, and the other half is as other things, eh?
Well, I turned 35 in May. So
Okay.
I'm now curious, in the 35 years you've sat in that position, what are some of the things that you've learned along the way?
I have actually learned the goodness of people and the honesty and sincerity of people. I think a lot of people might be skeptical. You make a bad car deal and the guy sells you a car and it's got a half-blown gasket or something. You start to get skeptical. But I think looking at all the people that traipse through the courtroom and all of the players, they are 99.9% good people. And
You've been sitting on the bench and seeing some of the, like, you must have seen.
Well, they've did bad things, but when they come to court, they're remorseful for the most part, and things that went really bad. Yeah, I hit my wife, and I feel just absolutely terrible about that, and so on and so on. And there's punishments that come their way, of course, but probably deep down, even though they committed that one crazy error, they're probably good people that would give you the shirt off their back, but yet they got drunk and they punched their wife or something. It doesn't make them forever a bad person. They gotta pay the price for that mistake, but they're good.
Gee, that should give everyone a little bit of hope, because I would assume in your position you get to, everybody talks about the bad car salesman, but I mean, you're talking about guys that have come in and some of it's harmless, I'm sure, but
sure
some of it certainly isn't.
Certainly isn't. That's for sure. Yeah. What the biggest thing I've seen in the last 4 years, I'm going to say, is this methamphetamine stuff has just turned the world upside down. Methamphetamine, and I don't know why, somebody's got to do a study, and it makes thieves out of people. If you're an alcoholic, you're not necessarily a thief. You may be, but you're not necessarily. You could be the biggest town drunk and you don't steal things. Methamphetamine, for some reason, makes thieves out of all of the addicts. I don't know what's going on there. So there's a lot of property offenses that are methamphetamine driven. And that drug didn't exist 4 or 5 years ago. It wasn't in the cards. There was heroin and cocaine and stuff. This methamphetamine stuff has really, really, really did a lot of damage. You can tell when they're in the prisoner's box. They got the meth teeth. Their teeth turn into little wee brown straggler things. So they got the Mountain Dew in the cup holder. For some reason, they have a craving for Mountain Dew. What the heck's going on there? Who knows? But Mountain Dew is something they have to have, and they got the bad teeth. And that's a clue that this guy is strung out on meth, and he's usually in court for stealing something that he's trying to pawn to look after his addiction. That's where you see most of it. But that's really changed things around. It's really increased the workload, and they're such sorry cases. They're so bad because they're the damn good people before, and they get into that, and it just ruins them.
Yeah, wrecks their life.
It ruins them physically. Obviously, if your teeth are rotting away, there's other things going on bad in your body just besides your teeth, and it wrecks all. They sell the toaster right out from underneath their mother. There's nothing that they won't do in order to keep that drug coming.
As a guy who sat on and seen different walks of life fall into problems, what was some of the lessons you tried to impart on your kids then? Like, you're seeing, if you get into this, this is where it leads, and that can be. Did you pass along any of that, or was it just?
I don't know. I don't think none of my kids have had any addictions problems. That is for sure, and they all have, in my view, exceptionally good work ethics. They work like dogs, all of them. All my son and my daughters and everybody just is really hard working. Whether that's just by osmosis or what, I certainly wasn't lecturing people. I remember when Riley was in grade 11, I loaded them up in the car, and I drove, and there was a nice M&M meat shop just off of the highway there, over by the sheepskin loft. And I drove them. I parked in front of the M&M meat shop, and he said, "Well, what are we doing here?" I said, "Well, Riley, I'm just showing you this place to tell you that I don't own this shop. I can't give you my job. I've sold the farm by then, and you got to make it on your own, kid, because I have nothing." A lot of kids in town, their father has some big business, a construction company, or you name it, and I have nothing to give you, Riley. And he says, I know. I said, "Well, you got to make it on your own now. You understand that?" The kid's in grade 11. It was just the summer. He's going into grade 12. And he already knew that I had nothing that I could provide him by way of occupation. He had to make it on his own. And, of course, all my kids have made it on their own, because I can't give them my judgeship. It's not something I own. Like if I owned a tire store or something, I could help them out. So maybe it has worked out that way. He's the only kid that I lectured to make him damn sure that he knew there was nothing coming from me as far as life career went, eh?
Well, that's an interesting thought, because, I come from a farming background, so there's always stay on the farm and take over the family farm, or dad and the brothers run a trucking company, so there's always go work there. Or, I mean, anyone can put themselves in that position if their parents own a business. Right?
It's a great fallback. I had it when my dad had the farm. I was an only son, and I got the farm, and I was going to kill myself. I had way too many balls in the air, and I was going to die in my Cessna airplane, flying around it from Saskatoon to Vanguard to put the farm in. And I just said, I got to stop this. I cannot keep doing it, eh?
So you were a lawyer flying back to Vanguard?
Yes.
Trying to farm?
I had a full line of machine, a new John Deere tractor discers. I was putting the crop in and working at it. And
your neighbors must have thought you were nuts.
Yeah, well, I landed on my neighbor's airstrip because I was too cheap to build my own, and just walked to our house and got in a truck and monkeyed. It was tough. It was
How long did you try and do that for?
I was doing that from 82 to about 92.
You did it for 10 years?
Yeah. Kept it. Now I had other people. I had Norman Tessier did the spraying. I had other people doing the harvesting. I didn't have a line of harvesting equipment, but I had grain bins and augers and seeding equipment and cultivating equipment. And then if I got swamped, I would phone up Norman and say, "You got to do the summer follow." So he would, because we were going 50-50 farming, which you don't see around here. We'd summer follow half, crop the other half, eh? And he would jump to it and do it that way. It wasn't a very efficient way to farm, because that's more expensive than doing it yourself. But that's what I was forced into doing, eh? Because I just couldn't get there. And you'll get down to Vanguard, down by the U.S. border, and she socks in. And without an IFR rating, which of course I never had, I'm stuck there. I can't get back to the legislature, back to my law firm or anything, because you can't you can't fly in that skunky weather. It's got to be fair weather flying, eh? So I tie up the airplane and catch a ride back to Saskatoon in those years, eh? Just a mess.
So what was the nail in the coffin? What was the final thing you went, I can't do this anymore?
I got a phone call from the guy who I had farming my farm at this time, Tom Dennehy. And Tom Dennehy was my farmer. Tom Dennehy now owns MTM Oilfield Supply here in Lloyd, the beggar. He phones me up and he says, "I'm sorry, I can't farm your farm in the spring." And this was about Christmas. He phones me up. Oh my God! Now, because he was about the third guy I'd had, and Tom himself was getting out of farming, so he was going to get out of farming mine, and he winds up in Lloydminster here with me running the oilfield supply stuff. He's a wonderful guy, him and his wife Gloria, but he was my last guy. And then my other neighbor, Henry Barbier, had found these German investors who, through a Assiniboia land group, were buying up all sorts of farmland, and they were paying prices that we'd never seen in RM. So I sells my farm for the highest price that had ever been seen in my municipality, and 2 years later it was worth half of that much again. It just kept going up. But at the time I sold the farm, I got numbers that were through the roof for that time.
Yeah,
they'd never been seen before. But
was that a tough day to sell the farm?
yeah, it was tough. But none of my boys, all my boys, were in medicine or dentistry or something by then, and they were going off in another direction. None of them had expressed any interest in, let's keep the farm. I'm going to go down to Nowhereville and start farming this stuff. And thus it wasn't a loss to my sons or my daughter, because none of them were into the ag business. And it was a goddamn headache for me, put it that way. So, yeah, it kind of fit at the right place. And everybody that I talked to was for it, my wife and so on and so on. And it became one of these big corporate farms, all my stuff, one of the big Assiniboia land group, and it's farmed with massive, giant 400 horsepower tractors now, and it's one of these, like California, we're going into big farmers in Saskatchewan, and my farm is just one of many of the holdings that went into this big pot down there.
Yeah, the reason I was curious about whether it was a tough day or not as well, I just think of the...
We were homesteaders, you betcha.
Yeah, absolutely, right?
Yeah.
And
but I got up here, there's no bloody way that I could even manage that, let alone farm it from Lloydminster. It was just
impossible.
Too far.
Yeah.
And the Cessna traffic is so unreliable, you cannot do it. And by then I had the Tom Dennehy's of the world that were farming it. Norman Tessier, the Norman died, and then had another guy from Pontex, and then Tom and Gloria were the last people. And they did a wonderful job, except they had bigger fish to fry, i.e. starting MTM oilfield supply here in Lloydminster. They're just out there by the old PV Mart there, across from the rapeseed plant, and doing well, I hope. Maybe not in this crazy economy, but it started out good for them.
People can't see me chuckling right now, but I'm laughing because you go, the kids are all hard working. I have no idea where they get it from. Yet you were a lawyer, actually a judge at the time then, flying back and forth to try and farm.
At the judge time, I was only managing it. I'd given up actually farming at that point. And Tom Dennehy and others were doing it. But prior to that, I was trying to do everything at once, and it was crazy. Absolutely crazy. Yeah. You just couldn't do it. My distances were all wrong.
People always give me a rough time because I work. I got 3 kids that are 4 and under, and I'm doing this podcast, and I'm, and everything. But when I listen to you, I go, I'm not doing that much. Like that seems like a workload.
Yeah. It was too much. That's for sure. Too much. Yeah, quite a bit easier without that headache. That is for sure. But you look back, and now the farm's worth a lot more than I sold it for. The ground prices went up, and you've lost the heritage business of having it been in the family all these years, and you really got to have a kid to take it over. Is the only way that the farm can carry on. Keeping it in the family as absentee landlords is not the way to go. So if I'd had one of my sons that wanted the farm and expressed some interest in it, then certainly you could have did something there and made a go of it. But that was a foreign country. It was a long ways from Lloydminster, that place. They'd been down there and looked it over and stuff, but that's not where their heads are at.
Yeah, and for your kids not growing up on the farm, it wouldn't have had the sentimental value that it had for yourself.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Boy, I'm one of many stories like that. There's so many farms that have disappeared out of the family, or throughout the whole of Western Canada. Yeah. It's just, how do these big farmers exist without buying up little guys? That's what they do.
And that's what they all, for the most part, all started out as little guys.
And I myself, I'm philosophically against that. I'm a small farmer guy. I think that a farmer should wear coveralls and farm 5 or 6 quarters. But no, today they got to have a $500,000 combine and a 400 horsepower tractor and farm 20 quarter sections before they figure. But I'm nostalgic for the ways it used to be when I was a kid. I'd like to see a bunch of small farms, but it's never going to happen. My wife grew up on 3/4 sections. They had 12 kids on 3/4 sections east of Saskatoon. They'd have 2 cars to go to church. It was she grew up and they had pigs and cows and chickens and animals, and the big expenditure, eyeglasses, you couldn't make on the farm, so they had to get money together from cream cans to buy the kids eyeglasses. And she grew up east of Saskatoon on 3/4 sections of farmland and raised a real good family. All her brothers and sisters did very well. It can be done. It's just that you can't have a new half done every 2 years,
That's right.
like they expect to have now, eh?
Yeah.
But it was done then, and she grew up on 3/4 section, big garden, animals. They grew all their food right on the farm, and yeah.
I've talked a lot about exactly what you just said, and what's probably scary about the world now is very few people know how to grow a big garden or a garden.
Yeah.
Very few people know how to, even if you had the livestock, what to do with it to make it,
Yeah. We still have a garden. We still do it. There's one at our place. Some other people come and we got so much dirt there that other people garden, but we have our own plot amongst the big garden, and we still do that. There's nothing better.
What's your favorite thing to come out of the garden? Like, what do you look forward to?
I like them little potatoes.
The little potatoes,
I love them
yeah?
little buggers that are size of a golf ball. I really enjoy them. But we grow everything in there, the whole works.
It's the best thing about going out to the farm for myself is Mom and Dad still live on the farm. Mom still grows a garden.
Yeah.
And little potatoes, they are fantastic. Yeah, a little bit of butter on those.
Oh, wow. I'm going to have some tonight. My wife's cooking. We had chickens last year. We had 36.
Butcher them yourself?
We butchered them.
Yeah.
Dr. Saeed come out, and we got all the stuff going, the boiling big drum of water, and we chopped off their heads, and we plucked them, and we eviscerated them, and vacuum packed them, and froze them, and we put 36 of them away, and we're eating one tonight, eh?
Yeah.
And the potatoes come out of our garden, and that'll be the main staple of our Valentine's Day suppers tonight. Coleen's cooking that big chicken right now. They get big.
Oh, man.
They get like a turkey, these things.
Yeah.
Eh?
Well, actually, we did that this summer with Mom and Dad. They had, we did 24.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they hadn't butchered chicken since I was like knee high.
Wow. Yeah.
And so the group of us went out and helped and did everything you just said. I'm chuckling right now.
I got the fingered plucker that runs on the furnace motor.
Oh, did you?
I got that, and
we used our hands.
Oh yeah,
well,
yeah.
gloves.
But you got
gloves,
it. That doesn't get underneath the wings. You still got to pick off the pin feathers, so that gets the bulk off.
Yeah.
And then after that, you gotta go by hand, and then over to the gutting table, and away you go. Eh? So we had a big horse trough there with cold water because they've got all that heat in them. So as soon as you get the guts on them, you got to put them in that water to cool them down.
Yeah. Yeah.
And once we get them all there, then we take them all out and pad them off with napkins.
So are you doing butchering chickens every year?
Pretty much every year. We have laying hens this year. We have laying hens most every year. We tried turkeys this year. We lost them all. A weasel came and ate killed all of our turkeys. But we had 24 Nicholas turkeys this year as well.
And the weasel killed them all?
Came. He bites them on the back of the head, and they're all laying dead in there.
Really? Kill all of them?
All of them. We had seen the weasel the day before on our back deck, and little weasel going along. Yeah, right. And we had him off with a big net, but the weasel can go through anything.
Yeah.
He just go through anything and killed them all.
I feel like I'm.
And after that happened, then I felt bad. We loaded them up and put them on our manure pile, and then I was out. Every year I take my laying hens in October out to Wallasave at the petting zoo, and he uses them. He feeds the bobcats, feeds the bears with the laying hens. And he said, we were telling him the story. He says, "Well, what did you do with all of those dead turkeys?" And I realized I should have put them in the truck and taken them out to the petting zoo so that at least some bobcat or lynx or black bear
would have had a good meal.
Yeah, I wasn't thinking very hard at all.
I wonder why a weasel would do that.
He just wants to kill. He just wants to kill things. Didn't eat them. He just bit them on the back of the head and killed them. It was just like a snowbank out there with dead turkeys.
Weasel the serial killer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're difficult.
Vicious little.
If they were going to eat them, you wouldn't feel so bad. A coyote will take one and run away and eat it, or a fox, you'll take one chicken and he'll go eat it. But they don't methodically kill the whole flock like a weasel does. Yeah, for sure. I'd heard about that before, eh? But
seeing is believing.
Yeah, for sure. Little wee things, not much bigger than a
gopher.
Yeah, for sure.
I gotta ask, what's one of your favorite memories of now that you've been in Lloyd for a considerable amount of time?
Yeah.
What's one of your favorite or fondest memories of being in town?
Well, this is odd. The fair and the United Church food booth, and that sort of stuff is something that's stuck in my mind. I love that, and not working at the food booth. My wife worked there a bit, but just going there and having the apple pie and ice cream, and
it's a
so
staple.
on. And the
You always gotta-
kids are out in the midway, and I'm the grandpa now with the kids out in the midway. But boy, that's a nice memory. That, yeah.
Well, that's a staple of the Lloyd Fair. You got to stop by the United Church booth.
Yeah, they're all good. I've patronized the other food booths at all, but the United Church one is a nice one. Bob Jack built that building, as I understand it. When you go in there and you look up at the rafters and so on, he was the guy that slapped that building together for that church booth. He's long dead, of course, Bob Jack, but he's the guy who did it all, as I understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how many rainstorms I've hit out in that building and grabbed a cheeseburger and a piece of pie.
You can hear
like
the chuck wagons going behind
That's
you.
right.
The sound blasts right through, eh?
Yeah.
Very thin place. Yeah, there's other memories, of course, but that's sure a good one. I enjoyed the fair. Gosh, we're ever going to have a fair again, it'll be Mike Sidorik's gone. Things are changing out there.
Yeah.
It's a whole new world, eh? And with this virus thing, who knows what they'll be doing next July, you know?
What was one building maybe that we got in Lloyd that you were excited when it first came to town, like that they were putting up? Or
many of them in that category. I watched intently as Musgrave built his big building on the Cockeyed. He didn't get it on the lot very square. Eh? He's on the angle there. That was fun to do. We watched the Upgrader get built. We knew people who were working out there and watched that get built. It's not a building. It's really something.
Yeah, that must have been something to watch go up.
I couldn't believe it. Me and my wife drove by that. We were heading to Saskatoon for some reason, and they had a half section of land out there. I think it was old Conlon's land, and they were running road patrols. They were scraping this thing. So they took that and they tilted it like a pool table, so it's low on one side so it would drain. And I thought to myself, what in the hell could they be building there that would take such a big footprint? What are they doing? Why are they clearing all this land like that? And I couldn't wrap my head around the size of the footprint on the Upgrader. So when they were doing the leveling work, I was absolutely baffled. Like, what is going on? And they took that quarter section and they flattened it out and then they tilted it all to one corner, just like if you lifted up the end of a table, so that the thing would always forever have proper drainage. So there's never any duck ponds or anything there. And that's a lot of work. They moved a lot of ground. They'd have laser levels and they'd move a high spot to a low spot, but they flattened it all out. And then they started building it. But I was boggled at how big of a area that they had to flatten out to build that Upgrader. It was nuts. Then when you see it all makes sense. You know, all the pipes and the tanks and the this and the that, it all makes sense, eh, when it's in place. But trying to wrap your head around it before. Big Blue coming here, that giantest crane ever to the hydrogen cracker. That was the one that had just been to Saudi Arabia and put out the fires on the Saddam Hussein stuff in what year was that? 91, the Gulf War. But it had been when Saddam Hussein lit up all the Kuwaiti oil wells. They took a great big bell and they'd crawl up, getting upwind, and they'd put this big bell over the oil well fire and snuff it out just like you snuff out a candle, eh? And that crane got deassembled, and then it came
brought to Lloyd.
Brought to Lloyd. It was called Big Blue. The hydrogen cracker. It's 5 inches thick of stainless steel. And it changes under, I think, 4,000 pounds pressure. I'm not a steam engineer, but it changes the molecule from heavy oil to light oil. By it actually changes the molecular structure of the oil. And that thing was so heavy that it only could be built in Germany and Japan. I think they picked Germany. It was floated over, because it was so big, to Thunder Bay. And then they had to wait till January, where the rail lines were frozen solid, before they could bring it to Lloydminster, because if you brought it in a non-frost month, it would destroy the railway track all the way from Thunder Bay to Lloydminster. So when the rail bed got frozen, then they brought the hydrogen cracker. Then Big Blue lifts it off, puts it on the cement pad it's the heart of the Upgrader, is a hydrogen cracker. And that was such a big thing that they couldn't even build it in the United States. It was too much of a thing. Germany or Japan. And that's what changes. That is the Upgrader, is the hydrogen cracker, eh?
Wow.
At Big Blue, I looked at that crane. I couldn't believe it. That crane had 4 sides, 4 drivers, each on each wheel, move the crane around. It's got four drivers. It's quite the deal. It's a very, very famous crane that came right to Lloydminster, and that was something to see. I didn't see it in action. I went out and seen it either before or after it did its one lift. Just brought here for one lift. Eh?
One lift.
Yeah, from the rail bed onto the cement pad that they built for it. Eh?
Wow.
Quite the deal. Quite the deal. Bud Miller was the guy who was in charge of building, the executive guy in charge. He wasn't an engineer or anything, but he had offices in my building, so I'd go and visit him all the time. He's the guy they named Bud Miller Park from.
Right.
He was MLA but he was in charge he was the chairman of the upgrader board that was in charge of that. So I got to visit with him a lot, and there were engineers from all over the world. It was something else. But they had a board, and Bud Miller was the chairman of it. So I would visit with him over the noon hours sometimes, go down to his office and talk to him. And a lot of it, I'm sure, was over Bud's head. It was fantastic engineering. You can't have any bottlenecks in the process. It's got to be all done to proper scale, and so on and so on. So quite the thing. That was the biggest thing that's ever hit Lloydminster, is that upgrader. It is a big deal. You think the refinery is a big deal. They moved that, from Cody, Wyoming.
Yeah, up here.
Yeah, Samson Trucking.
Yeah.
They cut it in pieces and painted numbers on it and brought it here and welded it back together again. That is nuts. That you could move an oil refinery the way they did.
In the late 1940s.
Yeah, that was something else. Yeah, so that's the refinery is a big deal, but the upgrader is a much bigger deal.
Yeah. Did you
sure.
notice a change in Lloydminster once it was up and running? Like more traffic, more people?
Yeah, you notice a change in the turnaround. They do that every once in a while.
Yeah.
And places, every hotel room is full, and I've had people come and camp in my yard with motorhomes and stuff that involve in the turnaround. They just need some place to stay, so. They park out there. I let them park, of course, and then they run to the upgrader and do the turnaround work. Yeah, lots of fun.
What do you think's better, being a grandparent or being a parent?
Yeah, they're both different. The grandparent's good because you're not with them 24/7, and you get to do all the fun things with them. So the grandparent one is good. Very good. It's a lot less work than being the parent, and you just get all the fun stuff. Eh? I'm having them over tonight. We're having one of them chickens.
Yeah.
I was telling you about. We're cooking it tonight, and
some of the grandkids are coming
Casey
over.
and Jessica and the kids are coming over, so we'll have kids running in every direction. Eh? Yeah.
If you could go back to your 20-year-old self,
Yeah.
what would you tell him?
What would I tell my 20-year-old self?
That is correct.
Just as it turned on, by 20, I'm in university. I was having a good time. Just keep plowing ahead. Try to enjoy life as much as you can. I didn't get married till I was about 30, so I had a lot of years to go there before I actually got married. Eh? And I did all sorts. Did some traveling and.
Where did you travel to?
Just around North America.
Okay.
Yeah, I had an opportunity. I remember when I was in second year of arts and crafts, I had this job lined up that wasn't very good. So I thought, hell, I'm going with this John McLeod guy. He's going to go to Europe and do the Eurail thing. So I was going with him. I was all ready to go, and be damned if I didn't. I'd applied for a job at the Regina Research Station, which really paid good. It was a federal government job. And this job came through, and I thought, oh, my God, I can't turn this job down. It's such a high-paying job. So I phoned John and said, listen, I got this job that I never expected to get. It's going to pay me like $18 an hour back in those days. I said, I got to take it. So he goes to Europe without me, and I end up grubbing out the whole summer at the research station, and I got some money for it, of course, but I wish to hell I'd have did the European trip with him as opposed to make the money with the Federal Research Station in Regina, eh? I didn't know what's going on. The Swift Current's a big research station now for Ag Canada, but they had one at Regina those years too. And so I missed out on some trips and got lots of other good trips. We went to Hawaii a lot, me and Colleen, back in the Ward Air days, and we'd blow out of Saskatoon. It was $230 return. You got treated like a king on the Ward Air, and Hawaii was cheap, and we went over there most winters and just had a great time back in the day, eh? Now, of course, accommodation is high, and with this virus, you can't do anything anyhow. And things have changed. But in those days, we took advantage of the cheap airfares and things. Yeah.
Yeah, times have changed there, haven't they?
Yeah, God, haven't they ever, eh? Yeah, no more Ward Air. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you coming in.
Okay,
This
Sean,
has been
a pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely
sure.
fun to sit down with you, Kim.
Good.
Okay, well, thanks again.
Okay, thank you very much.
Hey, folks, thanks for joining us today. If you just stumbled on the show, please click subscribe. Then scroll to the bottom and rate and leave a review. I promise it helps. Remember, every Monday and Wednesday, we will have a new guest sitting down to share their story. The Sean Newman Podcast is available for free on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and wherever else you get your podcast fix. Until next time.